Zoom class with His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami. Tonight's reading is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 8, beginning with text 8. Here in the chapter entitled Dhruva Maharaj Leaves Home. If no one else would like to start the reading, I could start it out. That's right. Thank you for being with us, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Text 8. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Jaye Uttanapadasya Suniti Suruchistayoho Suruchi Prayasi Patyor Netarayat Suto Dhruvaha. Translation. King Uttanapad had two queens, namely Suniti and Suruchi. Suruchi was much more dear to the king. Suniti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favorite. Purport. The great sage, Maitreya, wanted to describe the pious activities of the kings. Priyabrata was the first son of Swayambhuva Manu, and Uttanapad was the second. But the great sage Maitreya immediately began to speak of Dhruva Maharaj, the son of Uttanapad, because Maitreya was very eager to describe pious activities. The incidents in the life of Dhruva Maharaj are very attractive for devotees. From his pious actions, one can learn how one can detach himself from material possessions, and how one can enhance one's devotional service by severe austerities and penances. By hearing the activities of pious Dhruva, one can enhance one's faith in God and can directly connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus one can very soon be elevated to the transcendental platform of devotional service. The example of Dhruva Maharaj's austerities can immediately generate a feeling of devotional service in the hearts of the hearers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganajana Salakaya Chakshomani Tanyena Tasmai Shri Prabhe Namaha. So now we're beginning this epic story of the life of Dhruva Maharaj. We learned that King Uttanapad was the second son of Swayambhuva Manu, had two wives, Suniti and Suruchi, and that one was more favored than the other. And this kind of sets us up. We're being led in on some of the friction that will contribute to Dhruva Maharaj's leaving home, as the chapter is entitled. There'll be some moment in Dhruva Maharaj's life suggestive of more moments of that, since there's this favoritism going on. Dhruva Maharaj is the son of Suniti, who's less favored than Suruchi. And Dhruva Maharaj, we will hear later on, will be impelled by his own nature and his own desires to deal with the fact that he's considered a person of less importance as the son of King Uttanapad, and how one thing after another leads to his great fortune in devotional service and his contact with Narada Muni, and so forth. One thing I would mention is that we've sometimes heard that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would take a great interest in these passages, these sections of Srimad Bhagavatam, Gajendra, Dhruva Maharaj, these stories, Prahlad Maharaj. He would like to hear them again and again, because, as it is mentioned here, they're full of wonderfully devotionally enhancing and stimulating stories. that, as Srila Prabhupada describes here at the end of his purport, can generate a feeling of devotional service in the hearts of the devotees. Guru Maharaj, would you like to say anything? Need to unmute.
Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shamaniti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavani Pashtadeshata Vangsakol Darubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayādvaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram. Yes, thank you, Panchatattva Prabhu. Srila Prabhupada liked to hear these topics, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we've heard especially, like to hear the topics of Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj. As I believe we heard in an earlier class, Maitreya was eager to move on from the gang of Adharma. He informed Vidura about those topics, but he was keen to move on to more the activities of uplifting. Well, to hear about the nasty things is uplifting also, because it impels us to get away from Adharma. But he was eager to speak about the pious activities of Dhruva Maharaj. The two queens were there, Suniti, Suruchi. Su means very nice. Ruchi means taste. And Niti means good behavior, morality. So the king was more interested in Ruchi than Niti, it seems. And it doesn't speak well for the king that he was essentially under the thumb of his preferred wife. That we'll hear more about also. The Srila Rupa Goswami tells us in the Nectar of Devotion, I believe it's Srila Rupa Goswami in the Nectar of Devotion, there's a verse to the effect that austerity can be uncongenial to devotional service, that it hardens the heart and is therefore contrary to bhakti. And I've heard that verse quoted quite a number of times lately, especially in, well, you can understand why. But here we find that, and there's, of course, we can't dismiss that verse. And it's not just by austerity that one attains the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Finally, we have to come to the point of pure devotion, as Dhruva Maharaj himself did. And on the stage of pure devotional service, then austerity is no longer of very much importance. Although we see that Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, even though situated on the highest platform, performed austerity. Sutapa, Sri Yukta Vrindavane. In Vrindavan, they Nidrahara Vihara Kadi Vijito Chatyanta Dinochaya. They were extremely austere, and they weren't neophyte devotees. And so here we hear about Dhruva Maharaj, and Prabhupada particularly mentions that by hearing about his austerities, we can advance in the feeling that hearing about this immediately generates a feeling of devotional service. in the heart. So it's an indication that the path of bhakti is not meant for, is not a path in which one simply dispenses with austerities on the plea that they harden the heart. What is that? Jnana vairagya yuktayo pasyanti atmani chatmana tachstradadhana munio jnana vairagya yuktaya pasyanti atmani chatmana bhaktya shruta grihitaya. So in devotional service, austerity and knowledge have a part to play. We don't want to become obsessed with pursuing knowledge to the extent that we miss the point of devotional service. And the same goes for austerity. We don't want to be so focused on austerity that we forget the point or become hard-hearted. But it appears that both jnana and vairagya can be congenial for devotional service, and more than congenial, can inspire feelings of devotional service in the heart. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Gurudev. I was thinking, of course, I'm kind of sidetracking it, but I was thinking also about the common complaints. One of which is when you start talking about any good qualities that devotees may display as described in Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, there's kind of like a whataboutism that happens. It's like if we say, when one has to chant the holy name of the Lord very humbly and being tolerant as a tree, they'll say, what about this? What about that? Aren't you going to get abused? Aren't you going to get used? Aren't you going to get mistreated by your temple president? All kinds of things come up. It's a whataboutism type of response. And it's kind of unfortunate because it derails the whole point. It wasn't that there weren't reasons when, for example, when Lord Chaitanya spoke the Shikshastakam, there weren't reasons to say, oh, I might get mistreated if I become very humble and tolerant and meek and I chant the holy names with great love and affection. People might walk all over me. Those things were there then too, but still Lord Chaitanya spoke these verses. So, Hare Krishna.
Good point.
We have a question from Vijay Krishna Prabhu. Severe austerities and penances to enhance one's devotional service. What about chanting, dancing, and feasting, which are so easy to perform? Aren't we advised by Lord Chaitanya to do only that?
Yeah, Prabhupada sometimes said this is what's the austerity? Chanting, dancing. He said it's more like recreation than austerity. Yes, but and that's there, but still there are restrictions. In the beginning, we invite people, just come sing and dance with us. But if they take up the process, they'll find that there are restrictions. No intoxicants, no gambling, no meat eating, no illicit sex. And then if they stick around longer, they might find out that even illicit sex is quite broad in its definition. So to follow these 4 principles is austerity. But that austerity is not antithetical to devote. If I follow these 4 regulative principles, I'll become hard-hearted, and that'll be contrary to bhakti. No, one must follow these 4 regulative principles if one expects to advance in devotional service. So, on the one side, yes, we have such nice austerities as hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting, dancing, but there is more. Hare Krishna.
Vikendra Prabhu says, I'm likely missing something obvious, but I don't know why the verse saying that austerity hardens the heart has been heard much lately.
Oh, well, I think it's sometimes associated with the desire to avoid austerity. Which is not to say that there aren't, that the verse is unimportant or that it shouldn't be quoted and that there are no good reasons for quoting it. But it seems to me it's sometimes associated with the desire to skip out on austerity, to sort of delete that from the menu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anything else in the chat? Who would like to read next? Guru Maharaj, would you like to read next?
Ekada Suruche Putram Ankam Aropya Lalayan Uttamam Narurukshantam Dhruvam Rajabhyanandata. Once upon a time, King Uddanapada was patting the son of Suruchi, Uttamam, placing him on his lap. Dhruva Maharaj was also trying to get in the king's lap, but the king did not very much welcome him. Tata Chakir Shamanam Tam Sapatnyas Tanayam Dhruvam Suruchi Srindato Ragya Sershyam Ahati Garvita. While the child, Dhruva Maharaj, was trying to get on the lap of his father, Suruchi, his stepmother, became very envious of the child. And with great pride, she began to speak so as to be heard by the king himself. Ati Garvita, too proud. The king, of course, was equally affectionate toward both his sons, Uttama and Dhruva. So he had a natural inclination to take Dhruva as well as Uttama on his lap. But because of his favoritism toward his queen, Suruchi, he could not welcome Dhruva Maharaj, despite his feelings. King Uttanapada's feeling was understood by Suruchi, and therefore, with great pride, she began to speak about the king's affection for her. This is the nature of woman. If a woman understands that her husband regards her as a favorite and is especially affectionate to her, she takes undue advantage. These symptoms are visible even in such an elevated society as the family of Swayambhuva Manu. Therefore, it is concluded that the feminine nature of woman is present everywhere. Irsham, with envy. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
What is present everywhere, Praveen asks? All various societies, especially human societies. It's there in Swayambhuva Manu's family, an exalted family of great progenitors of mankind, direct descendants of Brahma. So then what to speak of human society in, and not, Indian society or American society, but all over the place. That's the general drift of it, I think.
We have a question from Saraswati Mataji. Pranams, Param Puja Maharaj, and all the Vaishnavas. We know that polygamy was quite common during Vedic times, and SP approved of this, but here we can learn how it can lead to favoritism that can hamper spiritual progress. Other examples of this happened with Dasarat Maharaj, whose favorite wife was Kakeyi, which resulted in her asking for boons that hurt the entire family in one sense. Also, Maharaj Pandu preferred his second wife, Madri, which also led to his death. Draupadi preferred Arjuna too, which caused some problems too. So I'm wondering how polygamy could be a good thing, as it is apparent that it is difficult to avoid having favoritism.
Well, you're right. Polygamy is problematic, and so is monogamy. Therefore, the best thing is avoid marriage altogether. The marriage is problematic. Polygamy, monogamy, any gummy is going to be gummy. It's going to be problematic. So, therefore, that's, what is that? Rajasastu palam dukkham. The result of passion is suffering. The result of passion is suffering. So if we can avoid marriage altogether, we save ourselves so much trouble. But if it's not possible, then all right, marriage, monogamy, polygamy. My godbrother Vasudev from Fiji had 2 wives, and both, it was a very good arrangement. It worked out fine as far as I know. So in that culture, it was acceptable. He was a prosperous person. He could afford to maintain 2 wives. So it's very good. But everything, sadosham apinatyajait, everything will have some problem. Any duty or anything that we do in the world, there'll be some problems associated with it. Monogamy, polygamy, brahmachari life, everything will have its own problems. Well, then we shouldn't do anything. That's not possible. So we have to accept the difficulties. And of course, the difficulties with polygamy in the modern age. We have, first of all, government restrictions, and then we have sort of the opportunistic mentality of modern irresponsible men who will simply take Krishna consciousness movement as an opportunity for expansive sex life. So therefore, Prabhupada, although he favored polygamy, decided against it for ISKCON. Although, with all the GBC's rules about polygamy and so on, in Africa, it's kind of standard. So, we pass global resolutions that match our understanding of what's acceptable in society and what's appropriate devotional behavior. But then we run contrary to cultures elsewhere. In Africa, it's, you only have 1 wife. What's wrong with you? It's very common to have several wives. So, Hare Krishna.
Praveen Prabhu says, everyone meaning also men.
Everyone meaning also men. Everyone? Everyone means what? What's the reference to?
It might be from when you answered Praveen Prabhu's question, what is present everywhere? And now it might be hard to make
Well,
sense.
obviously, Prabhupada isn't saying that the feminine mentality is present everywhere in men, although some men adopt the feminine mentality also. But No, the women, the feminine mentality is present everywhere where there are femmes. With women, the womanly mentality is there. And in men, male mentality, with its, well, for example, the tendency to come under the sway of women, as we see with Uttanapada. The fault of the woman is to be proud and to take undue advantage, and the fault of the man is to be weak and under the woman's thumb. So there's no, that's the world. You find problems everywhere. If you want to be a man, you'll have problems. If you want to be a woman, you have problems. Whatever it's going to be, there'll be problems. Therefore, the best thing is to get out of this material world and go back to Godhead.
Saraswati Mataji says, thank you, and would be hard for women whose nature is to need protection in their different stages, if no marriage prospects.
I guess that's a response to my saying that we should have no marriages. So yes, it would be more difficult. And therefore, Prabhupada said all the women should get married and all the men should stay brahmachari.
Right. Vijay Krishna Prabhu, would you like to read text 11?
Yes, Pancha Tattvadas Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, you're most kind. Text 11. Navatsa Nripatir Deshnyam Bhavanarudum Marhati Nagrihito Maya Vam Kokshavapi Nripat Majaham. Translation. Queen Suruchi told Dhruva Maharaj, my dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king, but because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap. Purport. Queen Suruchi very proudly informed Dhruva Maharaj that to be the king's son was not the qualification for sitting on the lap or throne of the king. Rather, this privilege was dependent on one's having taken birth from her womb. In other words, she indirectly informed Dhruva Maharaj that although he happened to be born of the king, he was considered an illegitimate son because of his birth from the womb of other queen.
Would you like to comment, Prabhu?
What comes to my mind is that Queen Suruchi is playing the role of, if I am not wrong, and I think that in the future she will pay for that. She's being arrogant and selfish and disrespectful. Generally speaking, the Vaishnava etiquette is related to offering respect to each and everyone, the due respect. But I think she's mistaken, because thinking that, oh, you can sit on your father's lap only if you only if you take birth again from my womb, that is I don't, that is not to be said. She is, if I may say it, she's behaving badly here. That is my comment. I don't like it. The way she's addressing, and after all, Dhruva Maharaj is just a child. Why treating a child in such a, I would dare to say, violent way in terms of speaking? Because you can be violent while speaking, and Dhruva Maharaj is just a child. Very poor treatment, very inadequate and offensive, mostly because he's a child. We don't treat children this way. That is my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
You're
Maharaj,
welcome.
thank you.
In essence, she's saying, because you're not my son, you're no better than a bastard.
Right.
Sorry, Maharaj, you're no better than what?
A bastard.
Of course.
Vijay Krishna Prabhu, please go ahead and read the next verse if you like.
Of course, Panchatattva Prabhu. Text 12. Balusi Bata Natmanam Anyastri Garba Sambritam Nunam Veda Bhavanyasya Durlaberite Manurataham. Translation. My dear child, you are unaware that you were born not of my womb, but of another woman. Therefore, you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to fulfill. Purport. The small child, Dhruva Maharaj, was naturally affectionate toward his father, and he did not know that there was a distinction between his two mothers. This distinction was pointed out by Queen Suruchi, who informed him that since he was a child, he did not understand the distinction between the two queens. This is another statement of Queen Suruchi's pride. So here we have it. Srila Prabhupada, if I may present my comment related to this text and this purport, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning that the speech of Mother Suruchi is not different from, is being caused by, I dare to say, false pride. And again, she's addressing a small child, innocent child, in the sense of not knowing. The child was not knowing the difference, the distinction between his two mothers. And shouldn't Mother Suruchi, Queen Suruchi, speak in the way she's speaking to an adult who could be there, because he's an adult, could be there knowing the distinction between his two mothers? But no, she's speaking harshly to a child who doesn't know about this distinction. That is the same as yes, that is the same as demanding from the child something that the child cannot give her, because the child doesn't understand the distinction. And how can an adult person be so ignorant while addressing a child. And that's why Srila Prabhupada, I think, is mentioning that pride, and I think it is false pride, is causing Mother Suruchi to speak like this, because how dare she to speak to a child who doesn't know the distinction between his two mothers in such a way. If she wants to mention this distinction, first she needs to wait for Dhruva Maharaj to grow up, become an adult, and then this conversation could happen. But still, because it is being caused by false pride, better if Mother Suruchi doesn't speak it at all at any time. So this is my comment.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna Prabhu. Guru Maharaj, would you like to say something further?
Suruchi doesn't even mention the co-wife's name, just Anyastri, some woman other than me.
Okay. Amazing. So that the envy is also being directed at her co-wife.
Oh yeah.
And Dhruva's the hapless victim of it. Interesting. Saraswati Devidasi, would you like to read the next verse? This text.
There's a comment.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Saraswati Mataji has a question. I wonder how Suruchi could have been the favorite wife when clearly she is cruel and envious. Those are not attractive attributes. This reminds me of the co-wives of King Ketu, who poisoned his son from one wife due to envy.
Sex, basically. Sex attraction and whatever beauty or sweetness or whatever is associated with that has robbed the king of his discrimination. So as readers, we say, come on, Suniti is the good person here, and Suruchi is clearly just a proud, arrogant woman. But the king doesn't see that. He's infatuated with the tasty wife, the wife that he's got a preference for, the wife that's more, he sees as more of an object of source of sense gratification. And people, this is common, and talking about present everywhere, people become fools. They get infatuated with some floozy, some cheap, low-grade woman, and then oh, she's so nice, she's so this, she's so that, she's so this, she's so that, because they become overwhelmed by simple sex desire and lose their intelligence. I've quoted before that some wag said that love is like an hourglass with the heart filling in proportion as the head becomes empty.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Saraswati Dasi, would you like to read the next verse? It's text 13.
We have 2 more comments, or
Okay.
do you want to continue with the reading?
Oh, go ahead. Let's
Okay.
go through the comments. Good. Thank you, Russ.
Okay, sure. Tulsi Priya Mataji says, I was going to say a good many men don't choose a mate because of their character. And Pradipurna Mataji says, greedy mind makes even simple things complicated. Suruchi took that simple desire of a 5-year-old as threatening her desire to see her son inheriting the throne. Saraswati Mataji says, I cannot see well enough to read, sorry.
Okay. How about you, Ras Prabhu? Would you like to read?
Yes, so where are we now?
Text 13. 4, 7, 4, 8, 13.
4:8:13.
Yes, sir.
Tapasaradya purusham tasyaiva nugrahena me arbetvam sadatyat manam yadichasi nipasanam. Translation. If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo severe austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, and then, when you are favored by him, because of such worship, you'll have to take your next birth from my womb. Purport. Sarushi was so envious of Dhruva Maharaj that she indirectly asked him to change his body. According to her, first of all he had to die, then take his next body in her womb, and only then would it be possible for Dhruva Maharaj to ascend the throne of his father.
Any comments, Russ, Prabhu?
None for me. From you or Maharaj?
Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has comment. Her talk is to show the king that she has devotion, but she's not a real devotee. You must place yourself in my womb. Now, satisfying the Lord by 3, 4, 5, or 6 vratas for getting into my womb, you should then quickly die. I will see your mother weeping. May you and I be happy. So, talking about Narayan and doing vratas and austerities, so she's showing the king that she's quite in line with religious life, but it's just a show. And the envy's there, that not only will I to feel satisfied about my own preeminence, I have to see you suffer. This is the materialistic mentality. What is asomaya? I've killed my enemies and I'll kill more of them. This is mentality. The opposite, the Vaishnavas, they're unhappy to see others unhappy, but the materialists take pleasure in seeing others suffer. That's part of the reward. Not just that I won, but that you lost. Not just that I'm happy, but that you're miserable. That's my success. And then, yes, let your mother weep, and may you and I be happy. Just die and take birth from my womb again, and then the two of us will be happy. And your mother, my competitor, my co-wife, she can cry.
Praveen Prabhu says, she wasn't envious of Narayan, so can she still be considered a devotee, a neophyte?
Why a devotee? There's no, well, okay, at least she said the name of Narayan, that's something. And indirectly, she gets credit because she starts Dhruva Maharaj on the path toward the personality of Godhead. So it's her agyata sukriti, her unintended and unforeseen, unrecognized credits in spiritual life. But Prabhupada makes the point that she was making a show of, no, not Prabhupada, Vishwanath. She wants to show the king that she has devotion, not that she actually wants to be devoted. The real devotee is Suniti. But somehow or other, this good credit is there for, even for Suruchi, that she does point Dhruva Maharaj toward the path of Krishna consciousness.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Yovanananda Dasi, all the way from Guyana, South America. Would you like to read the next verse?
Sure. Very well. Maitreya Uvacha Matu Sapatnya Sadrukti Vida Swasan Rusa Danda Hato Yata Hi Hitva Misantam Pitaram Sanabacham Jagat Mamatu Paradan Sakasyam. The sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathes very heavily. Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the palace and went to his mother.
Would you like to make a comment on this verse? There's no purport you can read until we have a purport. Let's see if anybody would like to comment. If you'd like to comment, Yovanananda, please do. Otherwise, Guru Maharaj, if you want to, this reaction of...
Just that
Yeah.
Vishnu, oh, yes, Mataji, you wanted to say something?
No, Maharaj, I wasn't saying anything.
Okay. Just Vishwanath has comment, Sannavacham, which I think probably gives us remain silent. Sannavacham means weak speech, because he was under the control of his co-wife. So that's, we see that when we're under someone's influence, we don't speak up. Even Bhishma Dev and Drona don't speak up at the attempted disrobing of Draupadi. The reason was different. They had some obligation, financially, Prabhupada said, but they didn't speak up. Or Dhritarashtra, his son is planning all sorts of nefarious things, doing all sorts of nefarious things. But and even Akrura comes to Dhritarashtra and says, "You're doing the wrong thing. You're acting against the sons of your brother. Even from one point of view, that they're your citizens, and the king is supposed to be the protector of the citizens. He's supposed to be equal to all the citizens. So what are you doing? You're committing. You're maintaining Duryodhana. He's offense personified. You're going to ruin everything." And then, yes, I know, but he's my son. What can I do? So that's really adorable. Weakness of heart. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Yovanananda, would you like to continue reading?
I think there's something in the chat group there.
Yeah. Santosi Priya Mataji. Suruchi's mentality isn't very uncommon. She's not an extreme example of a villain, but an ordinary woman. She's looking out for her own and her child's survival and success. I think the pastime is highlighting this for the typical reader.
Okay.
So good that you said that instead of me.
Sure. Tam nihi swasatam spiritad haroshtam sunitir utsanga hudaya balam nishamya tatpura mukhan nitantam savidyate yadgatam sapatnya. Translation. When Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger, and he was crying very grievously. Queen Suniti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents who had heard all the harsh words of Suruchi related everything in detail. Thus, Suniti also became very greatly aggrieved.
Any comment you'd like to make?
No.
Gurudev?
This is the nature of a mother and the nature of a young boy. A young boy, when he has a problem, goes crying to his mother. And the mother will be overflowing with affection for the child and wanting to protect the child from the wounds of physical wounds or verbal wounds. The mother will, in so many ways, want to pacify is the word Prabhupada uses. Soothe the feelings of the child. That's not mother's natural tendency.
I was also thinking that it also kind of illustrates, although indirectly, the nature of those who were engaged in service in the palace. They came and explained to her in detail, to Suniti, what had transpired, what was said. And although it's not directly addressed, one can imagine that when you're in service in such a place, you're treated favorably or unfavorably as well. So they're passing along the news so that Mother Suniti would know quite well how badly her son was treated.
If she could understand that it wasn't just her son overreacting, but this is actually what happened.
Ananda, go ahead and read the next verse. That one will have a purport, I believe.
There's a comment.
Oh, is there a comment?
Yeah, there's a comment question from Praveen Prabhu. Following Tulsi Priya Mata's comment, couldn't there be circumstances where one's successes or even just survival may force one to act in such evil ways? Would it be still aparad?
Well, if one is forced to act as a matter of survival, then it may not be an evil way. There's something called apadharma, duty in emergency. So what we do in an emergency is different from what we do in ordinary times. Hard to see how this would be an emergency. The child wants to sit on the father's lap. So this doesn't really qualify for consideration that, well, it was some extenuating circumstance or so on. It's just straight out envy and pride.
Right. I think maybe, should we read one more verse or should we stop there for Kirtan? We're at 7:58.
Yeah, it's time to stop.
Time to stop. All right. All right. Who would like to lead the Kirtan? Any volunteers? How about you, Ras Prabhu? Would you like to chant Hare Krishna as we close?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnu Bhad Purnamutsa Pariprad Acharya Ashtotar Sadashi Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Kankamai Ki Jai Jamunamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you to all who attended this Srimad Bhagavatam class. We will convene again on Wednesday, the 27th, continuing our exploration of Dhruva Maharaj's activities in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila
Jai.
Prabhupada Ki Jai, His Holiness Jayādvaita Swami Maharaj Ki Jai.
Jai,
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gurudev. Thank you all
Thank
for.
you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Yogananda. Hare Krishna. Jai.